Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're cutting straight through the ice to look at the multi-billion-dollar reality behind Canada's rapidly aging icebreaker fleet. It might sound like a super niche topic, right? But as you're going to see, this actually touches on everything from global trade and domestic economies to climate change and some seriously high-stakes geopolitics. Okay, let's just address the elephant in the room. $30 billion. That is the staggering sticker price for the entire ice-breaking pipeline currently rolling out of Canadian shipyards. $30 billion. It's an astronomical figure, for sure, and one that rightly raises some eyebrows. But to really grasp why a country would commit this level of capital, we have to look at what they're actually trying to replace. Well, the driving force behind that massive check is a pretty profound crisis of age. 57 years, to be exact. Canada's current flagship, the CCGS Louis S. Saint Laurent, was actually built all the way back in 1969. I mean, think about that. Across the board, Canada is operating a fleet that is well past its prime. These ships are prone to breakdowns, and they are just incredibly expensive to keep running. Basically, they've run out of time to just keep patching up these old hulls. Which, naturally, brings us to a rather glaring question. Why spend tens of billions just to smash frozen water? You know, when people hear about Arctic fleets, they almost always picture this intense geopolitical race. Battleships carved for the ice, gearing up for conflict. But actually, to really answer this, we need to peel back that whole geopolitical myth of a war machine and look at the highly grounded, everyday necessity of this infrastructure. So let's get into Section 1. Infrastructure, not instruments of war. It is absolutely crucial to understand that these vessels are fundamentally local infrastructure. This fleet handles 4 essential everyday jobs that literally nothing else on Earth can do. First, keeping commerce moving in the heavily trafficked South, like the Great Lakes. Second, executing the vital North resupply for remote communities. Third, maintaining sovereignty and surveillance. And fourth, supporting science, search and rescue, and even flood control. So they aren't weapons. They're essentially the ultimate utility vehicles for a frozen country. And the real-world impact when this infrastructure fails is massive. Down south, a severe winter can easily cost $1 billion in lost commerce when those trade corridors freeze solid. Up north, though, the stakes are incredibly high and fundamentally human. When the ice wins, towns like Cambridge Bay can completely miss their single annual resupply barge. That means going an entire year without crucial food, fuel, and building materials. Just imagine that. Moving on to Section 2, building ships and domestic jobs. To see how this colossal budget is actually being spent, we really need to grasp the sheer scale of this multi-decade build schedule, which is spread primarily across 2 major yards. We're looking at 2 heavy polar ships, one built by Seaspan out in Vancouver, and the other, the Polar Max, uniquely split between Davie in Quebec and a shipyard in Helsinki. But the real volume, that sits with the medium ships, up to 16 multi-purpose vessels at Seaspan and up to 6 program ships at Davie. We are talking about a true generational industrial undertaking here. And this massive domestic subsidy is dramatically transforming the Canadian workforce. You've got an absolute army of 5,700 employees concentrated at Seaspan in British Columbia, while Davie is expanding to 1,800 direct employees in Quebec. And it doesn't stop at the shipyards either. Ontario is stepping up with the massive steel capacity needed to build these hulls. So this is heavily concentrating high-value engineering jobs right across Canada's entire industrial base. Which leads us to Section 3, the surprise American export. What's really fascinating here is what this capacity accidentally created. Subsidizing domestic sovereignty unexpectedly produced a highly lucrative, tradable engineering capability with the United States. Basically, an infrastructure program designed purely to keep the Canadian Arctic functioning has completely transformed into an exportable asset. And the speed of this turnaround is truly staggering. Check this out. In January 2026, Seaspan signs a design agreement for the U.S. Coast Guard's Arctic Security Cutter program. By May, Davie finalizes a reported $3.5 billion contract to help supply 5 of those American cutters. Literally within months, both major Canadian yards secured a historic footprint in an American defense program. This marks the first ever export sales of this kind from Canadian shipyards. I mean, nobody forecasted this kind of return on investment. Okay, let's jump to Section 4, climate, sovereignty, and sea ice. The Northwest Passage is currently seeing a staggering 44% rise in destinational traffic, which brings up a glaring and honestly kind of counterintuitive question. If the globe is warming, why on earth does the Arctic need more icebreakers? It's a bizarre climate paradox.
You see, warming temperatures mean the younger, thinner ice that used to kind of hold everything in place is melting. And this releases what's called old, thick ice, this incredibly hard, hazardous sea ice that used to stay clustered way up near the North Pole. Now, it's freely drifting southward, straight into shipping lanes. So a warming climate actually creates much more hazardous and unpredictable conditions in the near term. It perfectly justifies the desperate need for heavy ice-breaking capability.
Now, this environmental reality directly collides with a pretty serious legal ambiguity between two close allies. Canada views the Northwest Passage as internal waters, meaning they require explicit consent for entry. The United States, on the other hand, views it as an international strait allowing free transit. So the crucial point boils down to this. A sovereignty claim that you cannot physically police is just a claim on paper. If Canada wants to claim the waters, they physically have to be able to sail in them year-round.
And to help pay for all this, Ottawa got pretty creative with its accounting. They shifted the civilian Coast Guard under the Defense Ministry. The agency remains entirely civilian and unarmed, but, and here's the clever part, its roughly $2.5 billion annual budget now counts toward Canada's military NATO spending targets. It's a neat accounting shift, sure, but it also reflects the reality that an Arctic Coast Guard is deeply integrated into national defense and domain awareness. Let's bring it all home with Section 5, the real risks ahead.
First off, we have to look at the human toll. As Olayuk Akasuk of the Qikiqtani Inuit Association warns, for Inuit communities, sea ice isn't a barrier. It's a vital highway used for hunting and travel. These massive ships literally shatter those vital ice highways, compounding impacts on local transportation. This introduces severe human consequences that, quite frankly, remain largely unaddressed by the planners down south. And beyond the community impacts, the program is staring down a brutal trifecta of risks. 1. Schedule. Shipyards like Seaspan might be heavily booked until 2045 given their current pace. 2. Cost. The Polar Project estimate alone recently surged by $1.3 billion, and that was before construction even began. And 3. Crewing. I mean, it's one thing to build the holes. It's a completely different challenge finding enough certified mariners in a tight labor market who are actually willing to sail the Arctic for months at a time. Ultimately, a country with an Arctic coastline absolutely must own the capability to work in it. But when you look at the potential for multi-decade delays, the skyrocketing budgets, and these severe crewing shortages, you really have to wonder, has the actual financial and operational reality of this colossal pipeline been truly accounted for? It's a $30 billion question, and the answer is going to define Canada's Arctic for the rest of the century.